Hi, everyone. How y'all doing? Last week I said I was the silent part. Reverend Linda reminded me that I'm not this week. So I'm here to talk about the Camino. But before I do that, I want to say a word about what Pastor Irene asked me last week, if I want to say a word about 3 years of having this service here. And I want to say that this has been one of the most important things I've done in my life. Coming here every week knowing there was a community of people here who were working in a contemplative way to be closer to God no matter what the situation is, knowing every Tuesday I could come and do that. There might be bombing in Qatar, there might be riots going on, there might be surgery, there might be a procedure for my sister Mary this morning. It turned out okay, it turns out. There might be any number of things going on in the world in my life, and I know times the number of people in this room who have the same number of things going on in their lives. There is a sacred place to come to that would be quiet, would resonate with music, would allow someone to actually sit quietly if they want, where they could participate as much as they wanted. I remember when we first started that it was just prayers at the cross and coming up and lighting candles was me and Irene. That was it. No one would come up. No one came up for weeks and weeks and weeks until finally people started feeling comfortable enough that they could come up and share if they felt compelled or if they felt moved to do that. And as we've gone further and further and further, and as the community has developed, I felt like this is just a sacred time. And so I'm glad to be on this journey with you every week. So the Camino de Santiago, I didn't go the whole Camino this last time, but we're doing it in segments. The Camino is, for those who don't know, is a 500-mile pilgrimage from parts of Spain or north of Spain or outside of Spain, like Portugal, to the Santiago de Compostela in more southern Spain than that. And so we started, my son and I started 4 years ago in Saint-Jean-de-Pied in France. And for 4 years now, we've been going on sections as we go along. And so this was our 4th year. And this was a year of obstacles for us. So I want to start off by reading something that Phil Cousineau wrote. I took this book with me on my first Camino. You can tell it's seen its share of wear and tear. It says 8/29/22, just before my 70th birthday, departing with Shane, my son, for El Camino de Santiago. This book with us. So Phil Cousineau wrote this: for millennia, the cry of the heart, the cri de coeur, for embarking upon a meaningful journey has been answered by pilgrimage, a transformative journey to a sacred center. Think of those words, a transformative journey to a sacred center. And then compare that to all the things going on in the world around us. It calls for a journey to a holy site associated with gods or saints or heroes, or a natural setting imbued with spiritual power, or to a revered temple to seek counsel. To people the world over, pilgrimage is a spiritual exercise, an act of devotion to find a source of healing, or even to perform a penance. And here's kind of the key. It's not traveling to the Bahamas. It's not heading over to Paris to see the Olympics. It's not just going someplace to do something fun and luxurious. It's not something that may be meaningful in different ways. It is always a journey of risk and renewal. For a journey without challenge has no meaning, One without purpose has no soul. And so Phil Cousineau makes the point that people can go on these journeys, which are very normal in life. Oops. Are very normal. This is not the pack I took on Camino, by the way. Can make almost any journey sacred if we choose to do that. With the right calling, with the right devotion, with the right connection to what's meaningful in our lives and what we want to accomplish in our lives, we could take a pilgrimage across this state. We could take a pilgrimage across this city. We could make those places we go into sacred journeys. But it can't just be walking and walking and walking, although, as Irene has shown us tonight through her devotion and through her chants and everything, walking is a special something that is part of the Camino and has become a critical part of my life. So anyway, I thought tonight, I don't have much time, but I thought I'd just share a few things from the trip. For those of you who've not been on a pilgrimage, there's usually a lot of symbology. And so most of us take these shells with us and we put them on our backpack, so you know if someone's got one of these on their pack or some place on their person, that they're a pilgrim. There's someone on a sacred journey. They're not just walking, they're not just taking a bike ride to accomplish something, but they are pilgrims. And so this has a very special meaning. People go on the Camino for many, many reasons. They may have lost a loved one. They may have had something miraculous come into their life and are trying to understand it. They may be changing their careers. But they're all on the Camino for a reason. Some are there just for accomplishment. They want to see if they can go 500 miles in 3 weeks or something like that. And that's a worthy cause. So people are there for many different reasons. The other thing you'll find for pilgrims on the Camino is something called, if I can find it here, pilgrims. It's called the Pilgrim's Record, Camino de Santiago. And when you go places along the route on the Camino, you take this pilgrim's pass. And it's used to establish completion of the Camino de Santiago. So as you go along, people stamp your pass. So you may go to a cathedral and they will stamp it and they'll date it for you, which shows you've been there and it's a meaningful remembrance for you. Or a hotel that you've stayed at, or a hostel, or any number of places you've been along the way. So by the end, this represents halfway. This year we just got a little over halfway mark. And so there I also got a pilgrim's halfway certificate, which says that I've gone halfway, which is 250 miles. For us now it's 273 miles. But they're all symbolic parts of the journey that you're on with other people. So it is walking, and walking is one of the most miraculous things we do. So when you're on the Camino, when you wake up, you're preparing to walk. Then you walk. Then you stop and have a break and maybe have a coffee or have something. Then you walk. And then you stop and have a little sandwich or something. And then you walk. And at the end of the walk, you're done walking and you start getting ready to walk for the next day. So that's what you're doing. You're walking. I thought you might be interested. I don't know. I thought you might be interested. My son and I keep a little record of what we do. It started to be a mutual record. We write it together after when we were hiking. We didn't do this for the first couple of years, but we've been doing it the last couple of years. And it turns out he's the one who notices details, and he's the one who writes things down. And I'm just there and we talk and compare notes. So it's become his, which I think is really sad, instead of ours. But listen to him when he talks about some things which happened on the Camino. He says, this is in El Bergo. I was up by 6:30, this is him writing, all packed, ready to go. 7:20 went and checked on my dad, and he was sound asleep. So I headed down for a much-needed Americano and then another Americano while waiting for my dad, as if he were a 16-year-old girl getting ready for school. Had an amazing breakfast with pancakes, French toast, and omelet made by Javier. Javier and his wife, they run this hostel, or it's an albergue is what it's called, by themselves. And if you can imagine all it takes to run, it's like a bed and breakfast, but it's pilgrims coming in. They have to have a place to stay. They provide a meal. They stand there. Anyway, they're so gracious. Almost all of them are just gracious, and they're part of the Camino experience. So he says, not a whole lot. I mean, this is the day of the Camino. Not a whole lot to talk about on the walk out there. It was only 8.5 miles. Another beautiful day, though. We were up early enough to beat the heat. We arrived at our stay a little early, and it was closed. So we walked over to a fun little joint and had enormous scoops of vegetables for lunch. It was amazing. Once at our albergue, we met the proprietor and owner. Her name was Sun, S-O-N. She was a single mother, and her daughter was in Madrid, because in this little town there was not enough places for her to go to school and have other kids to play with. So she was a one-woman show, politely barking orders, and people that were checking in, showing them their rooms, grabbing their bags, and just being delightful. She's one of the most delightful people. It was a vegetarian albergue. So she made a vegetarian dinner, served out. We all got together in the evening and had our dinner together, and we got to know each other, which is part of the rituals of the community, get to know people. And so my son that night happened to run into a guy named Kevin. And it just so happens this Kevin lives in Venezuela, but he was in the fire department in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and he went to the same school at the same time as my son did. Isn't that amazing? We ran into someone from Fort Collins, Colorado, where my son went to college, Colorado State. So it's amazing the connections you made. On this Camino, we ran into and met and had conversations and meals and beer with people from Australia. We ran into a brother and his wife. He was a just retired colonel in our army, and his wife was retired from the military as well, I believe. We ran into people from all sorts of places. That's one of the wonderful things about being on the Camino de Santiago. He said, we did our laundry and hung it in the sun. You only bring enough for a day or two of laundry, 2 or 3 days actually, and had a couple beers in the garden area and then headed out. Met a couple of Aussies who retired from the Australian Air Force. Turned out to be super nice blokes. Dinner that evening was vegan. Anyway, he was talking with Kevin, talking about his family. Dad was conversing with a couple of Italians, which was a little more his speed than high school memories of El Dorado. So just one more thing, and then it's time for me to get out of here. Anticipating a very warm day, this is morning, we decided to leave a little bit early prior to daybreak. First time this year that a headlamp was required. We started off on a nice path with rows of trees, which were home seemingly to dozens of bats. A few miles down the road, we made it to our first coffee of the day. Pushing forward to the route to Leon consisted of tree-lined trails and Roman bridges. After one more café con leche and meeting some new friends, one of them was from Fort Collins, we pushed on through the outskirts of Leon. Not really the most memorable, but if you were in need of construction equipment, random car dealerships, in Spain's version of the Home Depot, you were in the right place. So, just to close with a couple quotes. This one's from Mark Twain, and it's very meaningful to me. Mark Twain said, long journeys hold out the possibility of self-improvement. Travel, he said, quoting Mark Twain, is fatal to prejudice, bigotry, and narrow-mindedness. Pilgrimage is a sacred journey, a journey to a sacred center. And so this last quote from Phil Costello, next week I'll probably talk more about, I think I'm talking next week maybe, I'll talk a little bit more about walking itself. He says, and if anybody decides to go on a pilgrimage of any kind, because this is various religious places he talks about the process of pilgrimage. He says, in each of us dwells a pilgrim. It is part of us that longs to have direct contact with the sacred. We will travel halfway around the world and endure great sacrifice and pain to enter the sanctuary, whether it is a temple, shrine, cemetery, or library. This is the way that is no way, but a practice. Walking in the Boise foothills at 6:30 in the morning, which I'll be doing tomorrow morning, is another place to make connection with the divine as the moon is out, the sun is coming up, and you know you're in the presence of God. Walking pilgrimage together, we're all pilgrims.